Hello, Kath. It's so nice to see you. How are you?
Hi, Elle. It's always good to see you. And yeah,
You've
I'm
you've had
doing,
a busy few weeks.
I've had a busy few weeks, but doing really well. I've had my mum and dad visiting from South
Mm,
Africa. They were with us for 3 weeks, and it was so good just to reconnect. And,
yeah,
there's a difference between speaking over FaceTime. We do speak quite a lot,
do.
but there's something very different about having someone in your home
Yeah,
versus speaking over FaceTime. So yeah, no, it's been lovely.
yeah. And so now your house must feel a bit quiet. Now it's back to normal, I suppose.
Yeah, whatever normal is, hey,
Yeah, that's right.
But very interesting. So something that I've recognized that I think is actually quite a fun topic to talk about
Okay,
this
sure.
week is okay, backtrack. I drive a little Mini Cooper.
I
I
love
love my
your
little
Mini
Mini.
Cooper. So do I.
It's a three-door Mini, and hubby and I realized before mom and dad came that we needed to swap cars for the duration of the time they were with us
Fair.
because, it's a big asking an elderly person to get in and out of the back seat of a three-door Mini
Mm-hmm.
Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reluctantly handed hubby my keys
Oh.
for 3 weeks. And the interesting thing is, I've heard it said before quite often that it takes 3 weeks to form a habit, like
Yes, I've
21
heard that.
days to form a habit. I've also heard contrary thoughts to this. And so some people say, yep, 3 weeks. Some people say however many days it takes. But nonetheless, let's just, what's been interesting is without even trying, I recognize that I've done this little experiment on myself
Okay.
because after my mum and dad left, which was Monday, hubby, we swapped cars back. And so I got in the car on Monday afternoon to go and pick up some groceries. And it was so funny because when I start my Mini Cooper, it's the ignition button is in the
Mm-hmm.
center console. And hubby's car to start, it's the turn key on the side of the steering wheel, on the right-hand
Mm-hmm.
side. So I got in the Mini and I couldn't find
Where to
the
turn the
turn key
key.
to start the car. And I realized, oh, yes, this car doesn't have that. It took 3 weeks, so 3 weeks of every day driving a different car.
Mm-hmm.
Already my brain had gone to, oh, how do I start this car? And I
Mm.
mean, I've had my Mini Cooper for years, and it was
Yeah.
just so fascinating how it only took 3 weeks
To
and I couldn't
confuse
figure
you.
out to confuse me.
You went to a
And
different automatic, the way
yeah,
to get in the car and start the car.
and I just realized, goodness me, 3 weeks and that automatic pathway
Mm.
was there. And then it
Fascinating.
didn't take me much further than getting to the top of my driveway and trying to find the indicator. And I'm like, was all like, I don't even know where's the indicator? Like windscreen wipers are going.
That's
And
brilliant.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was quite an eye-opener to realize. And then since then, I've been noticing other little patterns
Mm.
because we kind of sort of set into this rhythm and routine when my parents are with us of
Mm.
my morning routine looked different,
Yeah.
and the pattern became different. And it's just been, I don't know why I'm so surprised by this, but in
Yeah.
3 short weeks,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get back to my usual way of pre-visit how I did things,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just been interesting.
I love that story. I can just imagine you sitting in your mini all confused at where all the things are. But it is so interesting that 3 weeks. Wow, 3 weeks. So if we put this into life, so thinking bigger picture for a moment, our daily habits can dramatically change, really, in 3 short weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And the
love
interesting
that.
thing was in this case, like I didn't intentionally set my mind to change these habits because,
No.
it was just the nature of the circumstances
Mm.
that I wanted to um, offer my parents the most comfortable 3 weeks with
Yeah.
us. And so, the intention was how do we make these 3 weeks comfortable for them, which meant just
Mm.
doing things differently. But doing
Yeah.
things differently every day for 3 weeks. And the other funny story about this is my dad and I got into this little routine around breakfast as well.
Mm.
And it's, just thinking back on it, I just can't help but smile because after about we were like we were in the second week and we were upstairs and by this stage Dad's worked out his routine and exactly where
Yeah.
everything is. And we were in the kitchen doing the breakfast run and he looked at me and I looked at him and almost like simultaneously we both said to each other this one liner that came from a movie, like a little movie clip that we used to watch on New Year's Eve. And
Okay.
I've just suddenly forgotten the name of this clip. It will
Mm.
come to me in a minute. But in this
Mhm.
little clip that it's sort of we watched every New Year's Eve, the line, that one line from this movie is same procedure as last year.
Mm.
And so it's Dinner for One. It was called Dinner for
Okay.
One.
Don't think I've
And
seen
Dad
it.
and I looked at each other and we both smiled like simultaneously and we both said same procedure as yesterday,
No.
instead of like last year. And it was just this moment of, oh my gosh, okay, so yes, something that we did like as while I was growing up as a little girl and that had become sort of this known one-liner in our family.
Mm.
Fast forward all these years later and it was
Mm.
just beautiful. There we were and we
That's
both
lovely.
like same procedure as yesterday.
Oh, that's a special moment.
It was a special moment, and it's just these, yeah. So it was just the simple everyday routines
Mm.
that are so useful in the big scheme of life
Yeah.
because they are things that take little energy and little thought power because they're autopilot.
Yes. I love that. And I love that word autopilot. And it's interesting. So I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had with clients, and it seems so much bigger than it often really is. And we talk a little bit about rewiring the brain and what that looks like and changing our habits and taking action. But it's so fascinating that you did that without thinking about it. Your brain literally rewired itself on how to drive a car in 3 weeks. Like,
Yes.
and it's this big neuroscience process. It's all these little pathways in our brain that you would normally go in this one direction with your thought. It's changed and it's automatic. You don't think about it, it just automatically happens. It's
Yeah, and I
fascinating.
think, and what also is interesting for me, I think when we made the switch and I handed over my car to hubby and I was in his car, um, I needed to focus and have my wits about me because I knew my
Yeah,
brain was telling me you're driving a different car. So I think the mode I was in was not autopilot then,
that's exactly right.
but
Yes.
then the moment I tried to switch back to my own car and I wasn't actually even thinking about what I was doing and I just got
No.
in and it was, I mean, my mind was somewhere completely different.
Yeah, because it
That
sometimes is when you're driving, right? You just get in
absolutely.
and you just drive.
Yeah, yeah. So aren't our brains just
It's,
phenomenal? I mean, they
yes,
are just, it blows my mind how
they can adapt.
intricately and
Mm,
beautifully and wonderfully we're made that
mm,
there's so much that we do and take for granted
mm.
simply because it's on autopilot.
Yeah. And that autopilot, like, so I'm going to switch it up for a second and tell you a story. So
Yeah, please do.
as most of our listeners will know, and I love to exercise. I love being in
Yeah.
the gym. I go out walking. It's kind of who I am. Yet, I have found myself of late really not doing much, and I can come up with a gazillion excuses. I've got annoying puppies that need training and they take my time, so I can't go on just a walk at certain times a day because, I'm feeding or training or whatever I'm doing. And
Yeah.
so there's lots of excuses and lots of reasons. However, what that has meant is I have found myself not doing anything for weeks,
Okay.
like not even going up the hill. Now I do that every other day. So it's so funny that the autopilot can shift so quickly as well. So
Yeah.
it went from I just do these things for who because it's who I am, it's what I value, it's what's important to me, and I do it automatically, to it suddenly changed and then I
Yeah.
just didn't do it anymore. And so last week I was like, Alison, this is ridiculous. And
Yeah.
so I'd been actually, if I'm honest, I've been saying that to myself for a few weeks. It's not usually that helpful to just say, Alison, you're ridiculous. However, I was starting to have these conversations, but I wasn't making any changes
Yeah.
until last week. I was like, okay, let's just get your butt in the gym. So I went in, and then for the whole week, I did it every single day. And I was like, oh, why? there was this resistance. It
Yeah.
it was a struggle, but the moment I started to do what aligned with me and what I wanted and took the action, it's amazing how it started to go back into autopilot. It's just, I don't know. The brain is fascinating. We have so many barriers that we put in the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's incredible. And I think what's surfacing for me in listening to you say that in is yes, there are some things in life that it's not a choice or an intention so much as it is a just something we slip into.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, to sort of slip out of something and to be intentional about stepping into something that you know you desire, or at
Mm.
least part of you desires,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it's interesting how it takes the awareness
Mm.
and the insight and the choice to
Mm.
then decide to make the change, doesn't it?
Yeah. And even in your car, think back to your car, even though it took an awareness, oh, I'm in my mini again.
Yeah.
Like it took that moment, and it took several moments because the indicators were still in the wrong place for a few turns.
Yeah.
And it takes, some short, sharp shifts in our thinking and our focus. But
Yeah, and
then
the interesting thing, it wasn't even just like, so that was the first day. And then the second day, it was the exact same thing. I again got into the menu, looked for the turnkey. Oh, I don't have
that's
a
right.
turnkey. And that's when I realized that it's been embedded. The new
Hmm.
habit has actually been embedded. It wasn't just like on the first day, I just had a blonde moment or something. It was
Yeah,
actually, this is embedded.
yeah.
And so I'm guessing I do after we chat today need to
Hmm.
go and to pick up a few things. So I am going to be getting back in my car, and I'm hoping that after this
Yeah.
conversation, my brain will be, oh, okay,
Back in the mini
back in the mini.
automatically. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But so I think the takeaway, if you're listening to this, like what is the impact on all of this on
Mm.
a larger scale for us in life, do you think?
Mm. Well, for me, what stands out straight away is 3 weeks when you're in something, like when you had your folks visiting for 3 weeks. 3 weeks is a long time in the middle of it, right? But when you look back, 3 weeks is so short amount of time. And what stands out to me is really 3 weeks to get rid of habits, to start new habits. I think that's just so exciting. That thrills me that we can change our life potentially, our day-to-day life in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. And I love my
Yeah.
brain for that.
And at least I think, it's a case of maybe changing one thing, and that
Mm,
one thing will have a long-term impact on life. And I'm thinking about,
mm.
I think you've shared this weeks ago in a podcast, but I remember you sharing how if you, are flying a plane and you set the coordinates just a little bit
Mm.
off, in the first half kilometer, you're still pretty much on track, but, it's 5 hours later or 12 hours later,
Yes.
you're completely off route. And
Yeah.
I think it's the same with our day-to-day habits.
Yeah.
It's not always necessarily a massive shift or a massive
True.
leap or something that's out of reach. Even just so the encouragement is even just a small tweak in one area
Mm.
of your life, and then intentionally choosing to make that small tweak every
Yeah.
day until it
Different
becomes
destination.
an automation,
Mm.
then a different destination. And
Mm.
look, for me, it was just interesting because this time period, it just was 3 weeks, and I'm recognizing what did change in 3 weeks. And I
Mm.
know that there's research out there that said, sometimes it can take up to 90 days, and sometimes
Hmm.
it can be 21 days, and sometimes so there's a lot of evidence for the 21 day.
Yeah.
And then there's some evidence that goes, 21 days is just a myth,
It's
it
not
could take
enough.
longer.
Mm.
But nonetheless, I think the big take home is that if we do something over and over and over,
Mm.
it will become,
A
like each
habit.
day, choose something to do each day. It becomes easier, it becomes routine, it becomes
Mm.
a habit, and that our routines are there to help us. They
Mm.
are, they're such a gift
Yeah.
because it means that we don't need to um, think about everything we do,
Everything.
But at the same time, sometimes they're not such a gift because sometimes the routine isn't taking us where we want to go and it's not
Mm,
giving us
mm,
the life-giving things we know we need in our world.
mm.
So I think my encouragement to you listening is to have a think about even just your
Yeah,
morning routines.
yeah,
What routines have you either intentionally or not intentionally put in place for yourself? Like, what does your morning look like? And
yeah.
sometimes for some people, I know the thought of structure or habit, it's just you just like, but that's not me, it's not who I am.
Mm,
But I think if most of us are honest, we'll have a certain way we do the morning, and it'll be how we do most mornings.
yeah,
And it's just helpful to reflect on what does that look like
yeah.
for you, and is it setting you up
For
for the
success
kind
and
of
what you
day
want.
that you want?
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
or not?
yeah. I had a friend, I caught up with a childhood best friend over the weekend and lots of laugh, lots of funny stories of when we we're growing up and all of those
Oh, and
things.
those visits just the best, hey?
Oh, it was way too short. But she said to me, because we are just talking about different things that we do in it with our life, and she's like, Al, what does a week look like in your life? Like,
Yeah,
tell me Monday to Friday. And it was fascinating because when you said before, people will say they're not routine people. I would say I'm not routine, not very good with structure, all of those things. But I have learned over time if I don't have some form of routine, things get forgotten, things get missed. The more I have some sort of routine, this is what I do in my mornings, this is what my evenings look like, the more likely I'm headed in the direction I want to go, which exactly is where the gym thing went, right?
yeah,
So I stopped doing those because my routine got out of whack. Other things invaded my routine. The dogs
yeah.
invaded my routine. If I'm to be, honest and reflect, even though I thought I wasn't a routine person, my routine has completely shifted because of dogs. And so then it's no wonder my day to day, what I enjoy doing has just slipped by because it kind of just didn't fit and I wasn't intentional in restructuring and reorganizing myself. And so
Yeah.
now that I've become aware of it, and it was funny when my friend asked me, what does your week look like? I was like, oh no, what does my week look like? And but when we started talking about it, it became clear. But I see myself as someone who's not so routine, but I realize the downside of that. And I also realize that that's not entirely true. I love that you said that. Our mornings often do look the same, even if we
Yeah.
don't think we're a routine person.
Yeah. And I think there's this whole, spectrum of things. And I think it's kind of having that background scaffold of
Yeah,
some kind of
yeah,
system. And then some people like to play a lot around and have, a lot of variation around that scaffold. And some people like to kind of just follow the scaffolds.
yeah.
And neither are right or wrong.
No,
It's just interesting to reflect back and go, okay, well, what is my
that's my
scaffold?
scaffold. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And then once, yeah, I think if we start to be curious about what it is and think about, okay, is it working? Am I heading in the direction I want to head, whether it's finances or health and often they all end up interacting and intertwining anyway. But if we realize, okay, which am I headed where I want to go? What little tweaks? So I'm actually more on autopilot in the areas that are important for me.
yeah. And I just love that you brought that up. And I think that's a brilliant topic for next week. Because how I see it, it's almost like the little habits. You zoom in, you zoom into your
Yeah,
day, and it's those little autopilot things that whether you're aware or not aware that you do.
yeah,
But then I think it's helpful to do a big zoom out and to ask, well, where am I actually headed and where do I want to
yeah,
go and what does that look like?
yeah,
So because it's really difficult to set up the zoomed in stuff, the little stuff, if we're
yeah.
not
Really
don't have
clear
some
where we want to
idea,
go.
or at least
Mm.
have some idea about, the big picture stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it's a perfect time of year as well. Now that we're, coming towards the end of one year and starting to think, okay, well, am I living the life that I thought I would be living? Am I going in the direction I want to be going?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
not, that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's have a pause and think about it and go, okay, how do we want it to look? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about that next week.
Brilliant. So if you're listening to this and you're enjoying the conversation, yeah, join us again next week. But in the meantime, for this week,
Yeah.
we'd love you to just simply, it's just a simple one question to just reflect on for yourself, if
Mhm.
you'd like to,
Sure.
is, what is what does my day to day look like? Do
Mm.
I notice any patterns? And are the patterns
Mm.
that I notice the patterns I want to have, or would I like
Yes.
something to tweak?
Different.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's a good question. And I'm definitely going to think more about this because I want to, yeah,
Yeah,
let's live our
me
best
too.
life. Hey, let's live brave, strong, and fulfilled. And yeah, let's get in the business
Yeah.
of tweaking our little day today
And if
and
you have joined
sharing
us
it.
this week, this is just reminding me, thank you, Al, Brave, Strong, and Fulfilled, our membership. So if you've been
Mm,
listening and if you've been with us for a while, super excited that next week is our next group coaching call.
yes.
So if you'd like to join us for group coaching, at the bottom of in the show notes of this podcast will be a link to
Hmm.
join the membership to find out more, because we'd love to connect with you in the space.
Yeah.
We offer group coaching once a month.
Yeah.
And so 21st of November at 5 p.m. Queensland time, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
100%.
We
And
will be meeting for group coaching. Yeah.
yes, and we can do that. And look, even if you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm interested in signing up for it, because you can do a year's membership or you can do it month to month. There's
Mm,
nothing wrong with signing up for a month or two and checking us out, seeing if it's what you would like or what you would expect. Jump on in and check us out and join us for the group coaching. We'd love to have you. Hmm.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All
Al.
right.
Well, and I look forward
Fabulous.
to talking next week about the bigger picture stuff.
Let's do that. All right. Have
See
a
you
great week,
then.
everyone.